Hello everyone, and welcome to this third section on the SAS Programming for Analytics course. This section will basically be taking you through lots of features when it comes to SAS programming and also some useful tips for your day-to-day work. This first lecture under this section is basically about manipulating your data, and I'll be showing you some techniques that you can use to do that. Now, starting off with removing variables, often it will happen that you'll have some variables in your data set that you do not want to keep, that just take up memory. It's important that you get rid of these, or you do not use these. SAS can handle them without any issues, but for efficiency's sake, either using a keep or a drop statement might be something very useful. Now, in order to remove variables, let's say let's pick up on this example, and let's say we wanted to keep only the category, the product name, and the new underscore price variable from the updated data set. So this is going back to the previous example. Now, both of these data steps will accomplish the task. So the first one, you use a drop, so drop price, once you've read the product's new data set, and the second one you actually do go the other way around. You just do keep category product name new underscore price. Okay, so they're very same thing basically, just using different statements, so the drop and the keep statement. Okay, now transposing a data set. This is a very useful way of restructuring your data, and it's often used to prepare your data for further statistical manipulation. Basically, often what will happen is that you'll start with a data set with many observations per subject or per instance, and output a data set with only one observation per subject, or vice versa. It's important that you bear in mind that the data needs to be sorted previously by the variable, by sort of the base variable or the variable that you want to refer to. Okay. So in this particular example, I'm sorting by customer, and then when I do a proc transpose, I'm transposing customer visits to transpose, or T underscore customer visits, which is the transpose data set, and the variable I'm using to transpose is the spend variable. We'll do an example later. Now, combining and outputting some data sets, we can use both the set and the merge statement to combine data sets. Use set to add observations to a data set, i.e. perhaps from another data set. Use merge to add variables of two or more data sets into a single data set. It's a bit like a join in SQL terms. If data sets do not have the same variables, then SAS will generate missing observations in the output data set. So this is important to bear in mind. We can also output multiple data sets in only just one data step via, for example, subsetting operations and using the output statement, which we've already covered briefly. Now, using a set statement. In the example there, you've got you've got a data set that comes from two original data sets, so data set number 1 and data set number 2. So this is really just what you get when you use the set statement. So in this particular case, you're generating customer underscore visits all, which is basically coming from the customer visits and the customer visits part 2 data set. You're just basically stacking up the data sets on top of one another, and SAS, again, as all processing, just reads one observation at a time until it gets stacked up. Now, a merge. You should use merge to match observations for two or more data sets. You will often want to use this or to run this merge on a common variable across the data sets. It's very important that they are sorted by the common variables, so use the sort procedure up front, and use a by statement in the data step to indicate the variables you are merging on. Okay, so in this case, you've got proc sort, so you sort the two data sets, and then you're creating an all underscore stores data set, which is basically coming from merging the T customer visits with the T customer visits part 2 by the customer variable, and what you get is what you see there, basically, where you've got those two data sets and they both get merged. A quick recap on joins. It will will not be unfamiliar to the ones of you coming from SQL. So an inner join, you're merging two data sets on common cases, so where the match occurs across both data sets. A left join means, hey, make sure that it's, you're merging the observations, all of the observations on data set on the left data set with the matching ones on the data set in the right, vice versa for the right join. And the full outer join, you're just merging all of the observations on both data sets. Okay. Now be careful about merge, so that you make sure you put the merged data onto a new data set. Again, must sort by the key variables before merging. It's a common error made by beginners. Try to apply variable and observation filters. Okay, that's also quite important. And if a variable x appears in both data sets, but x is not in the by statement, after the merge, x takes the values from the last data set. Okay. Now, keeping track of records during a merge is something that you often want to do. You can use this by using these automatic variables that SAS generates when merging. Okay, so in this case, using these automatic variables, calling them A and B, which basically tags observations that belong to each of the data sets. And you can just say, in this case, I'm doing an inner join, so I'm saying if A and B, which means that, hey, only keep the variables for each, there is a match in those two data sets. And there you've got the example of how those var A and var underscore B get handled. Okay. Now, an alternative to set is proc append. Use it when you do not want to read in both or more data sets via the set statement, because it will add the observations from the first data set to the end of a second data set, which is called the base data set. It's especially if you're worried about efficiency, it's a nice trick, and it's a nice procedure to use, because you're only reading one of the data sets. The force option there allows you to append even if the data sets contain different variables. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this section, guys. I hope again this we've covered a lot of ground, but if if you do have any questions, do ask them.